By Saturday, the pressure on the government was overwhelming, with tens of thousands protesting outside the presidential headquarters.
At the time this video was filmed, Sri Lanka was witnessing unprecedented political turmoil. On July 10, thousands of protesters stormed President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's official residence.
That's it! That's Sri Lanka! Come on, Sri Lanka!
Some even went for a swim in his pool, napped on his bed, and worked out in his gym. President Gotabaya has resigned and fled the country. This has happened against the backdrop of an economy that had been spiraling out of control, leaving citizens unable to afford fuel, medicines, milk powder, or even toilet paper. Sri Lanka has now collected over $50 billion in foreign debt and owes $78 million in interest alone. For the first time in its history, the nation has defaulted on its debt payments. Protesters blame the current economic crisis on just one family. For the past 20 years, the Rajapaksas have been in power. They've been accused of financial mismanagement at best and stealing millions of public funds at worst. But here's the kicker. None of the top dogs in the Rajapaksa clan have ever been convicted of any crime. This is the story of how one family allegedly bankrupted an entire nation and got away with it. This is the big steal. The Rajapaksa patriarch was D.A. Rajapaksa, a wealthy plantation owner who was a member of parliament from 1947 to 1965. Together, D.A. Rajapaksa and his four sons, Mahinda, Gotabaya, Chamal, and Basil, have created a political dynasty that has lasted 2 decades. Mahinda rose to power as a member of parliament in 1970. He was later elected as president in 2005 and as prime minister in 2006. His brothers captured important posts as well. In 2010 and 2015, over 40 Rajapaksa family members occupied government positions, sparking concerns of nepotism. But the family maintained a firm grip on Sri Lankan politics by fanning nationalist sentiment. Mahinda, especially, positioned himself as a strongman and savior, claiming that majoritarian Sinhalese identity was under threat. He doubled down on that message in 2009 when he and Gotabaya were credited for ending the Sri Lankan Civil War, a conflict between Tamil rebels and the government that began in 1983.
These men, we were told, have been to within a few kilometers of the Tamil Tigers' de facto capital of Kilinochchi.
This victory came at a great cost. According to a UN estimate, around 100,000 people were killed, including 40,000 Tamil civilians. Despite concerns from the US and the UK of human rights abuses during the war, the Rajapaksas managed to stay in power.
The end of the war itself has saved the lives of so many youth, whether it is in the north or the south. So we have done that. Is it a crime?
In 2005, 2 important things happened. First, the Rajapaksa brothers took over ministries that controlled over 3/4 of the national budget. And second, corruption allegations began to mount. In 2006, opposition politician Kabir Hashim accused Mahinda of diverting $820,000 of aid into a private account. This money was supposed to help the nation rebuild after the devastating 2004 tsunami. But Mahinda flipped the script and took police investigators to court for damaging his reputation. The court ruled in Mahinda's favor, and the case was dropped. The money later reappeared at the country's central bank. But setting aside allegations of theft, the Rajapaksas were accused of gross financial mismanagement too. Some say the family's excessive spending on government projects is one of the core reasons for Sri Lanka's current crisis. When the $210 million Matala Rajapaksa International Airport opened in his hometown in 2013, Mahinda thought it would be his crowning achievement. But a year later, it was a complete flop, only earning $120 for an entire month, which is less than the income of a street restaurant. By 2015, It was empty, defunct, and partly converted into a warehouse for rice. Expensive white elephant projects that don't generate income have become symbolic of the Rajapaksas' overspending. Worse, these deals suffer from a complete lack of transparency. Rajit Sinaratna, a political opponent, has accused Mahinda of forging illegal deals worth $5 billion. And critics say that may very well be just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to corruption among the Rajapaksas. The youngest brother, Basil, the ex-finance minister, was nicknamed Mr. 10% for allegedly taking millions in commissions from government contracts. In 2015, he was charged with stealing $530,000 from a welfare housing program, but was granted bail later. Like his brothers, Gotabaya, the former president, has dodged his fair share of graft accusations. He was under scrutiny in 2016 when an anti-bribery agency indicted him for squandering $75 million of state income by allowing a private company to maintain a floating armory. He was also charged for embezzling $185,000 for the construction of a museum dedicated to his father. But both cases were eventually dropped. When Gotabaya was defense secretary, he was nicknamed the Terminator for his fiery temper and alleged murderous disposition. He was accused of operating a secret death squad that covertly traveled in white vans, attacking dissidents and journalists. The impunity over the years has been so pervasive that it has apparently trickled down to the next generation of Rajapaksas. Mahinda's sons, Namal and Yoshita, have both been accused of laundering millions of dollars through different businesses. Namal was a cabinet secretary and remains a member of parliament, while Yoshita was the chief of staff of the prime minister. The Rajapaksas have denied all of these allegations, saying they're politically motivated witch hunts and international conspiracies to bring down the family. But beyond corruption and power plays, Sri Lanka's downfall boiled down to simple bad governance.
When the
Rajapaksa administration announced sweeping tax cuts in 2019, the country's budget deficit grew to 14% of its GDP. Most of the revenue was being used to pay off loans, so international credit rating agencies were forced to downgrade Sri Lanka. Even the governor of the central bank appealed to citizens overseas for donations in US dollars, sterling, or euros to augment the nation's budget for the importation of essentials like food and medicine. After an internal power struggle, Mahinda and the cabinet resigned earlier this year, while Gotabaya fled the country and also resigned to pacify the public. Earlier, he also appointed political rival Ranil Wickremesinghe as prime minister and even promised not to contest elections again. But Sri Lankans say this isn't enough. Although Wickremesinghe is from an opposition party, he's still considered a political insider. In Sri Lankan politics, even when the Rajapaksas were out of power, control only shuffled between members of a rich, elite political class. They're like spokes on the same wheel, replacing each other after elections, promising to be tough on their rivals, but ultimately continue to chum together because they all benefit from the prevailing system. As of July 2022, Sri Lanka's economy is still paralyzed. They're out of food, fuel, and even electricity. The government has raised taxes to generate revenue, forced shutdowns to save fuel, and incentivized officials to take up farming in order to boost the economy. But the nation needs $6 billion to bounce back and survive the next 6 months. Glaring mismanagement by the Rajapaksa family has dealt a huge blow to Sri Lanka's economic development. But the current crisis may have spelled the end of a once powerful dynasty and could usher in a new era of politics in Sri Lanka.